Real Madrid are staring at a nightmare scenario, and it's all centered around one name, Jude Bellingham. What initially looked like a straightforward hamstring problem now has alarm bells ringing across the club because his injury may be far more serious, and the timing could not be worse. This all started just over a week ago in La Liga against Rayo Vallecano. The game had barely started. We weren't even 10 minutes in when Bellingham made one of those trademark runs toward the byline. No contact, no clash, just a sharp, sudden movement. Immediately, he reached for the back of his left eye and went down. You could see straight away that something wasn't right. He didn't even try to walk it off. His hand went straight to the hamstring, and his face said everything. Pain, frustration, and a real hint of worry. As the medical staff came on, cameras caught him lying there, then later sitting on the bench with his shirt pulled up over his face, trying to hide just how devastated he was. He knew. The fans watching knew. Carlo Ancelotti and the bench knew when a player like Jude Bellingham, who has played through all kinds of knocks this season, calls for a substitution that early, it's never good news. Real Madrid's medical staff ran the tests and later confirmed the diagnosis. An injury to the semitendinosus muscle in his left leg, one of the main hamstring muscles. The club initially communicated what sounded like a relatively manageable situation. Early estimates pointed to a recovery window of around 1 month for the midfielder wearing the number 5. A month without Bellingham is already difficult, but it's the kind of timeline you can work around. You reshuffle the squad, you ask more of Vinicius, Rodrigo, Valverde, you lean on the experience of Kroos and Modric, and you hope to survive that stretch without dropping too many points. But now, that optimism is fading fast. Journalist Ramon Alvarez de Mon has reported that the situation may be more complicated than first thought. According to his information, the expected recovery time might not be 4 weeks, but closer to 8. In other words, Real Madrid may be facing up to 2 full months without Jude Bellingham. If that is confirmed, everything changes. Let's be very clear about what a 2-month absence would mean. We're not talking about missing a couple of routine league matches and a cup tie. Bellingham would be ruled out of a critical part of the season, right when titles are shaped and momentum either builds or collapses. In La Liga, that timeline would see him miss matches against Real Sociedad, Osasuna, Getafe, Celta, Elche, and, crucially, Atletico de Madrid. Those are not throwaway fixtures. Real Sociedad away, or at the Bernabeu, is always a tactical battle. Osasuna and Getafe are exactly the kind of physical, intense opponents that make you earn every point. Celta and Elche might look more manageable on paper, but in a tight title race, anything can happen if you're not at full strength. And then there's Atletico, a derby that can swing an entire season psychologically, not just mathematically. Now add Europe into the equation. In the Champions League, Bellingham's longer absence would rule him out of the playoff tie against Benfica. And if Madrid progress, he would also be missing from potential round of 16 clashes against top-level opposition like Manchester City or Sporting CP. That is where it becomes absolutely brutal for Carlo Ancelotti and his staff. The Champions League is exactly the environment where players like Jude Bellingham make the difference. Tight games, big atmospheres, fine margins. He's been one of Real Madrid's most decisive players in Europe, with those late runs into box, goals in crucial moments, and a mentality that looks made for knockout football. To be without him for that entire phase would be a massive handicap. And we're not just talking about a talented midfielder. We're talking about the player who has effectively become the face of Real Madrid's new era. Since arriving in Spain, Bellingham has been playing at a level that put him straight into early Ballon d'Or conversations. Goals, assists, leadership, work rate, presence. He has been scoring like a striker, creating like a number 10, and pressing like a box-to-box midfielder. He's been everywhere. Take that out of the team, and there's a huge gap to fill. Real Madrid know all too well how dangerous hamstring injuries can be if they're rushed. The semitendinosus muscle is a key part of explosive sprints, changes of direction, and those late surges into the box that Bellingham does better than almost anyone in Europe right now. If they push him back too early and he relapses, they won't be talking about a 2-month layoff, but possibly 3 or 4, and then you start talking about him missing the final stretch of the season instead of the middle. That's why this new 2-month time frame, if accurate, is both a worry and a sign that the medical team might be leaning on the side of caution. In a club like Real Madrid, where the pressure to win is permanent, choosing conservative option is never easy. But given how important Bellingham is, it could be the only sensible call. Inside the club, concern will be widespread, not just for the player, but for what his absence means structurally. Alvaro Arbeloa, a club legend and part of the coaching structure at Madrid, will be watching this closely. As someone deeply connected to the club's present and future, he knows exactly how critical a fully fit Bellingham is to any long-term project, whether it's domestic dominance or building another European dynasty. Tactically, Ancelotti is now facing a complex puzzle. With Bellingham on the pitch, Real Madrid can play this hybrid system where he floats between midfield and attack. He arrives into the box as a late man, creating overloads, forcing defenses to make impossible decisions. Track him and leave space for Vinicius and Rodrigo, or ignore him and watch him score. Without him, the structure has to change. Do you push feed Valverde higher up the pitch and use his power and energy in more advanced areas? Do you give Brahim Diaz consistent minutes as a creator between the lines? Do you fast-track Arda Güler into a bigger role, trusting his talent even if he's still adapting? Or do you lean back on the old guard, asking more creative responsibility from Kroos and Modric while making the front line carry the goal-scoring burden? Whatever solution Ancelotti chooses, there's no way to fully replace Bellingham's mix of physicality, technique, and timing in front of goal. You can cover parts of what he brings, but not the full package. There's also the psychological side. Bellingham has become a leader in the dressing room, despite his age. His intensity, his celebrations, the way he embraces the pressure playing for Real Madrid, it all spreads to the players around him. When he's on the team sheet, opponents feel it. When he's out, rivals sense opportunity. La Liga opponents like Atletico, Real Sociedad, Osasuna, and others will absolutely look at this news and think, this is our chance. Benfica, in the Champions League playoff, will feel more confident if they know that the player who thrives in big European nights won't be lining up across from them. For Bellingham himself, this is a huge mental test too. He's a fiercely competitive character, famous for his maturity and drive. He's adapted to life in Spain incredibly quickly and has handled the pressure wearing that iconic white shirt, as if he'd been there for years. Now, he has to deal with something every top player hates: watching from the stands, unable to help. The cameras will still be on him. The papers will still talk about him every day. Fans will still debate whether the team can cope without him. But as much as he'll want to be out there, this is where long-term thinking has to win over short-term emotion. Real Madrid didn't sign Jude Bellingham for one season. They signed him to be the centerpiece of the club for the next decade. One thing they cannot afford is to turn a bad hamstring tear into a chronic problem by rushing him back too soon. We've already seen him take big hits this season and play through discomfort. That warrior mentality is part of what makes him special, but in this case, it has to be controlled. The club's medical staff, Ancelotti, and even voices around the club like Arbeloa will all play a role in managing him. From a broader perspective, this potential 2-month absence also has implications beyond team trophies. Individually, Bellingham has been in the mix for every major award and recognition you can think of. Missing a big chunk of the season, especially the period where Champions League ties and decisive league games are played, can shift those conversations quickly. Fair or not, those prizes often go to players who shine brightest in March, April, and May. That's another reason this is such brutal timing. We're not in October, where there's time to recover and reset. We're entering the heart of the season. The title race is tight. The Champions League campaign is about to hit knockout intensity. Every match from here on out feels like a final, and Real Madrid might have to play it without the man who has been their most influential performer. Now, until the club officially updates the timeline, there will be some room for speculation. Fans will cling to any sign of progress, any training image, any small quote from Ancelotti in a press conference hinting at an earlier return. But if the 2-month projection is close to reality, the planning has to assume Bellingham is not available for these upcoming fixtures. Anything earlier would then be a bonus, not an expectation. In the meantime, this is where the rest of the squad has to step up Vinicius Jr. and Rodrigo will be expected to carry more of the attacking load. Midfielders like Valverde, Kroos, Modric, Camavinga and Kulmini will need to find new balance without that extra roaming threat ahead of them. Players on the fringes like Brahim or Güler could turn this into a breakthrough opportunity if they respond well. Real Madrid have survived injuries to big stars before. They've won Champions League titles with key players missing or playing through pain. But anyone who has watched them this season knows that Jude Bellingham is not just another name on the team sheet. He is central to almost everything they do well. So right now, the entire Real Madrid world is essentially holding its breath, waiting for official confirmation, watching every medical report, counting days on the calendar. Ancelotti will keep things calm in public. But behind the scenes, the staff will already be building two separate game plans. One without Bellingham for the long haul, and one that kicks in immediately if he returns sooner. What is certain is that if this extended timeline is accurate, it is a huge blow at the most delicate point of the campaign, the La Liga race, the Champions League playoff against Benfica, and potential clashes with giants like Manchester City or tricky sides like Sporting CP will all play out without Real Madrid's number 5 on the pitch. And that turns Jude Bellingham's hamstring, a single muscle in his left leg,